Hello dear students, my name is Dr. Saurabh Jain. In this video we will discuss the science and technology questions that have appeared in Prelims 2026. Now you might have seen the paper. It is one of the way out of league paper which we have seen in PT 2026. Science and technology has gained approximately 11 questions which are more information based, and these questions have been more current oriented also. These questions have been more factual in nature also. But still, nonetheless, we look into the number of questions or the type of questions that appeared in science and technology in this year. The first question, which is this question discussion, is based on series B of UPSC paper. Question number 58, in which the question spoke about which of the following items of defense hardware is manufactured in India. Now, this is again something which has been there in current affairs or which have been spoken of. Now, this has been the nature of 2026 PT paper, that more of the generalistic information is being asked. Now, UPSC has created a clear-cut demarcation of generalistic concepts and generalistic information also. Conceptual understanding as well as the information, the generalistic information becomes important over here. Now, we look into this, we speak about these things in defense technology, and many a times we miss these informations also. Right? But nonetheless, if we look into Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter jets, yes, they are being manufactured in India with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. T-90 Mk3 tanks, they have been introduced in India from the Russian sides, and then they are manufactured in India. Now they are being supplied from India also. Right? But the Akula class submarines, for which in 2019 we have created a kind of deal between Russia and India, and this has been a 10 years lease for which the Akula class submarines have been provided to India. So this is not manufactured in India. These two are manufactured in India. So the precise answer should have been 1 and 2 for this. Right. Next question, if we look into, then again an information based question which has appeared about the semiconductor device processing or microprocessor development. This has been there since 2025 in current affairs, has been spoken of many a number of times. Right. About the DIR-V program, which is Digital India Risk-V program, which is targeted towards development of microprocessors in India. Also, the semiconductor-based development coming from the DIR-V program. It spoke about Dhruv 64, which has been there in 2026 current affairs also. Right. It is the microprocessor developed in India. It is the third microprocessor developed in India. In fact, it is developed under DIR-V program, and it is a 1 gigahertz microprocessor which functions on 64-bit processing abilities. Right. Now, in this, again, an information-based question. This is correct, which is it is the third chip fabricated under the DIR-V program, and an overall aim to enable the creation of microprocessors in India. Of course, DIR-V program is directed towards that only. And it is first homegrown 1 gigahertz 64 dual core processor. Yes, it is also correct. So more of the information based question, answer should have been 1 and 2 for this. Then we look into, now before going further into the number of questions that we discuss, I would like to inform about the Drishti IAS courses or the courses available over Drishti platform. All different courses for say UPSC, for teaching, for CUET, for judiciary, etc. They are all available at 50% discount now. You can avail them as soon as possible. You can call 87501 for all the information. Also, the Drishti IAS GS Foundation courses are available at 50% discount. You can avail. This is first come first service. Early birds would be given the benefits. This would be a particular program where we'll have the specialized faculties teaching for GS. We also have the AI powered learning now. Now coming back into the number of questions that we have. Question number 76, which appeared this year in 2026. We look into the question, which of the following are the features of blockchain technology? Of course, blockchain technology remains as a distributed network of data sharing or data storage also, where a peer-to-peer network is being established between different stakeholders or different users of that particular data, and which the data remains distributed across all these different distributed networks, is stored. The copies of it is being stored in every computer over there, and the storage and the use of the data is based on certain programs or certain mathematical calculations which are to be solved by every stakeholder on every node to either access the data or to read the data or to write the data or to modify the data also. So it remains as a distributed or a kind of democratic method of creating a data method or data storage or data sharing also. We look into this has been constantly been used for development of cryptocurrency. This has been constantly be used for banking systems. Central bank digital currencies can be based over this blockchain technology. This has also been used as blockchain NFTs for sharing the digital records of arts, music, etc. So blockchain technology has been discussed exhaustively across the foundation courses. When we look into this, the records stored in the database may be made visible to relevant stakeholders without the risk of alteration. Of course, they can be visible on the peer-to-peer network which has been created. This will be a peer-to-peer network. A peer-to-peer network is when different nodes of computing are connected to each other and then they share the data amongst themselves. The utility of the data is distributed amongst everyone. Everyone has the access to the data, and data either cannot be modified, or if it is modified, it can be modified on the consensus of the people also, right? Copies of entire database are stored on the multiple computers. Of course, every computer in this node will have copies of this being stored. Consortium blockchains is a blend of public and private blockchain. Consortium blockchains are specifically provided by certain organizations, right? They remain as a space separate from public and private. Private is for say a limited number of users using a blockchain technology or developing a peer-to-peer network, and then they access the data over that. Right? Consortium blockchain may become a kind of establishment where a company has established or an organization has established a blockchain and can give limited permissions to people, but it is separate from private and public. So when we look into this particular statement, consortium blockchain is a blend of public and private. No, it is a standalone, a separate kind of blockchain. It can be the blend of public and private blockchains are hybrid blockchains. Over here, we have to understand this, that the hybrid blockchains might be those which can be written over here. But yes, rest of the thing, consortium blockchain is a blend of public and private blockchain, allowing selective access to the data. Yes, they do allow selective access to the data, but they are not blend. Rather, they are being placed between private and public blockchains. So they are separate from public and private blockchains. So this statement may not be correct. Mathematical algorithms make it possible to change or delete data once recorded and accepted. Yes, there are multiple mathematical equations which are being sent in or are being explored by multiple stockholders on the blockchain. When they solve that particular mathematical equation, their consensus either to store the data or to use the data is being taken into account using a public key and a private key on a blockchain. So there are two different passwords on blockchain. One is a public password inserted by everyone. One can be the private password, which is inserted by the person intended to write the data or read the data, right? So now over here, the overall utility of mathematical algorithms over here is just to create a consensus of the data stakeholder, or to create yes or no, either to write the data or not to write the data, can be taken up as a consensus using the mathematical algorithms over here, which is one of the aspect of blockchain also. So over here, if we look into this particular question, statement number 3 remains incorrect. Now, when we look into the most probable answer over here would be 1, 2 and 4 for this question, which is blockchain. This has been a question which has been asked in science and technology, in economy also. Rather, this has been placed with the questions of economy, but it is a pure science and technology question, right? Next question that we look into is about the genetic medicines. Biotechnology related aspects have been constantly there in science and technology, and biotechnology is one of the primary subject in biotechnology in science and technology. Now, if we look into this, they are asking about the genetic medicines. When we speak about genetic medicines, this is directly helping us, or this is directly asking about the gene therapy related aspects. Gene therapy, which is one of the important therapies in personalized medicine nowadays, has been explored at large. Now, this involves the modification of the DNA, either alteration of certain DNA segments, genes, or we can say certain codes in the genes itself, using specific enzymes like CRISPR-Cas9 or different other enzymes like TALEN or zinc finger nucleases or other endonucleases, we kind of modify the exact gene sequence either to improve its function or to strike down its function, if the whatever may be the nature of the gene or whatever may be the nature of the disease which is caused by that particular gene. Right, now we look into this particular question. Genetic medicine corrects, compensate for the faulty genes. Of course, it corrects or compensate for the faulty genes responsible for the disease. Yes, any kind of the genetic disorder or any kind of the disease where a personalized cure is expected, that can be provided using genetic medicines. Engineered viruses and lipid nanoparticles are the carriers of the disease. Yes, carriers of the genetic medicine. Yes, they are the carrier. Engineered viruses or even vectors or even liposomes or even nanoparticles or even gene guns can be those which can insert the instruments, or we can say the mediators of gene therapy. Of course, they can be used. Genetic medicines alter the entire DNA sequence? No, they cannot alter the entire DNA sequence. There are certain gene therapies which we can say can be the gene therapies as heritable gene therapies, but heritable gene therapies have been restricted to be used, which can change the entire DNA or which can create or which can reconstruct a new hypothetical DNA also out of multiple genes inserted together or multiple genes being used together. But it is not permitted to be used. So genetic medicines do not alter the complete DNA, they just alter one segment of the DNA, which is gene, or rather certain base pairs of a gene itself, right? So DNA, and in the DNA we have a particular active segment which is gene, and genetic modification or genetic alteration would be done on certain bases inside this gene, either to improve its function or to strike down the function. That's it, right? So statement number 3 does not stands correct. Statement number 1 and 2 would be the most probable answer that we can see for this particular question. Next, if we look into, then we have the question relative to the large language models. Of course, this is one of the question expected for, we can say, 2 or 3 years, right? It is the question relative to artificial intelligence, right? In the artificial intelligence, one of the component of artificial intelligence is natural language processing, which helps in the processing up of the human languages by the computers and addressing the aspects of syntaxical errors or addressing the addresses of creating a sentence, forming a sentence, or forming a script, etc. So natural language processing is one of the important aspect of artificial intelligence where writing scripts become important. Now, in the artificial intelligence or with the components of artificial intelligence is the kind of the perception gained by a machine, that artificial intelligence is gained using machine language or machine learning. In fact, not language. Machine learning is a tool where the machine learns about how to read, write, or correct the data, which again is dependent on deep learning. Deep learning is a method in which the machine tries to understand the patterns in the data. What different kind of a pattern is present in a particular data? Say, for example, it is a sentence, it is a text, then what type of word is present? What nature of the words are present? Either they are grammatically correct, either they are synthetically correct, or there are certain syntactical errors into that, or there are certain forms of ambiguities into that, or there are certain forms of changes which are being required, or the script can be written in some other voices, some other understandings, or in certain other emotions, etc. This all is being taken up by the machine to understand the patterns which are present in the data. And when we identify these patterns in the data, we try to write a script or correct the script also. Now, using all these methods or programs of natural language processing, artificial intelligence based machines can write the data using the large language models only. The basic deep learning of this becomes the large language model. In the large language model, the artificial intelligence looks into the complete script, complete line of the aspect, looks into what different types of words are present. Either they are present in the correct grammatical arrangement, or there are certain aspects of changes required. The general purpose use that you see is with the Microsoft or the word based sentence correction method. These are the preliminary aspects. Now, at a large, the machine can itself think, right? Earlier, these would be the sentence corrections by the machines. Okay, this is not grammatically correct. You can write it in this way. Now, the machine is thinking itself to write a particular script in one particular way. That becomes a large language model. But large language model somehow is more dependent on humans, how the humans have written. If a particular language is written, or a kind of language is written which is more biased to a particular thing, or which is more inclined to a particular thing, ultimately the artificial intelligence would also write the same thing into that manner itself, right? So it thinks into writing a particular script, or it can write certain sentences, words without ambiguities, but still it remains inclined to what has been written by humans, or what has been there in the natural language. So now we understand this LLM. LLM assign probabilities to next possible words and then pick one with the highest probability. Yes, of course, it tries to understand that, okay, fine, what has been the emotion of writing that particular thing, or reading that particular thing, or the notation of reading that particular thing in say natural language, or the things written by human. Now pick up the most probable word into this. So it arranges words in a particular line or in a particular sentence, or it looks into a particular sentence, and then it compares the things between the sentence, but in doing so it also arranges the most probable words in the sentence, which could be the most correct word in the sentence. Next is LLM processes data through mathematical optimization to minimize prediction errors. Of course, this is one of the function of deep learning, which is identifying a pattern in the data set and then identifying the overall optimization of the words, which is the lexical analysis. In the lexical analysis, we identify these sentences with the probabilities or with the patterns in the data itself. Right? The large language model produces the unbiased outputs, rather they do not. They produce a biased output. This is one of the major challenge with the large language model, that of course if a particular sentence is written in some particular way, it would be represented in the same way by the machines itself, right? So it does not go unbiased, or it cannot reduce that biasness in writing a particular thing, right? It cannot be neutral, right? For example, if you're writing about India, with what perspective you are writing, that biasness would not go out. The Indians would write with a perspective of, say, patriotism. The others may write with a perspective of criticism. Now, when the artificial intelligence is being used to write these sentences, that biasness either of criticism or of, we can say, favorism, is not being nulled by the artificial intelligence, which is one of the major, or we can say by the deep learning, which is one of the major problem or one of the major challenge with large language model. So these two statements, 1 and 2, they are correct, but still third one is not correct. So answer should have been 1 and 2 for this particular question also. Right. Next is a question which has appeared about the stealth technology. This is there, constantly there. We have spoken about stealth technology in defense constantly with the next generation fighter jet programs, 5th generation fighter jet program, 5.5 generation fighter jet programs, which we are developing also, we are expecting also. All of these, they have been there. And then the stealth objectives of F-35 and stealth objectives of Sukhoi 53. Su-53 has also, 55 has also been spoken of much recently. So this has been there in news. This is again a current affairs based question, or the topic appeared because of the current affairs based question. Now this is an easy question. Now when you compare questions over here, we look into this, the LLM based question. This is a simple question, not very tough, but majority of the students would face a trouble in answering such type of the questions, because when we read artificial intelligence, we read it more superficially. Right? We read what is the utility of artificial intelligence. We do look into the components of artificial intelligence, but going that deep into artificial intelligence is something which we have seen this year, right? Or things can be read in that depth also. But again, mind you, for those all those students which have appeared this year and they are not very much confident about the paper, they are thinking of preparing again. Now, these different types of questions must not change your perception also. UPSC is so bad, UPSC has asked such a question, or UPSC has asked such a difficult question. There's nothing called as difficult. You must always understand this particular thing, that UPSC frames questions in different subjects in a particular method. 50% of the questions, they are easy, they can be easily solved. Rest 20% of the questions are those which would be tricky. 20 to 25% questions which would be tricky. You will fail to identify one of the things in the question. That can be solved again with reading. But then there are certain types of the questions which are just framed to create a kind of mindset or a kind of difficulty. Now, when you appear for PT, when you appear for such exams which are more objective, which are more information based, which requires a vigorous reading, which requires a vigorous understanding also across all subjects, you have to understand one particular thing, that you cannot attempt 100 out of 100 in UPSC PT. 60-70% of the paper, if it is approached, and approximately 65% marks are being gained in this particular paper. 65% I am saying. If it is being gained in PT, it is fair enough, you're going good. So for those who are not feeling good for this particular paper, or those who think that my attempt is now exhausted, I would be looking for the attempt next year, keep one thing into mind. Don't change the way you look into things. Of course, things require a deeper understanding, things do require a method, or things do require a strategy to tackle these subjects. Things do require a constant reading also, because current affairs in this year's paper has not been the current, the 2026 current, or what you say from 2025 to 26. It has been more contemporary. 24, 25, 26 DIR V program asking about that is contemporary. It has started 2023, starting coming up in 2023 for current affairs. The Dhruva 64 question which has appeared, right? Of course, it has been there in 2025 current affairs, right? Or you speak about stealth technology, or you speak about the large language models, etc. They have been there across time. But if you feel certain questions are difficult, certain questions are those, are ye kaise puch liya UPSC, this is not something which this should not change the way you look into the objects of your preparation. If you are able to appear for 70% of the questions which are being asked, if you are able to mark 70% correct questions or correct answers, you are into the right track, right? Don't get discouraged out of these type of questions are being asked or something like that, right? You must keep these things into mind when you are preparing for the next year. Moving on to the question, which is the stealth technology. Stealth technology is a method which has been used in the current generations or the modern generations of the aircraft, where we try to reduce the radio interference by objects like aircrafts. So what we do, we create sharp edges so that radio waves or radars, if they are being created in a particular field, they are not being disturbed by the design of the aircraft. Number one is we create sharp edges. Number second, we paint the aircraft so that it creates a minimum radio interference, or the radios are being absorbed, they are not reflected back. With the radar, the basic technology is you have a radio wave over here, it goes into a particular field. If anything comes into that radio field, radio waves would be reflected by that particular object, and that reflection of radio wave or receiving of radio wave at the transmitting end identifies the location, position of a particular object entering into the radio field. The stealth technology tries to bypass this mechanism, right? Which is, we bypass that particular radio field. When we have to bypass this particular radio field, how do we do this? We create sharp edges so that the incoming radio waves, they are not being interfered. Second, we paint the aircraft with certain objects that the incoming radio wave are absorbed over here. They are not reflected back. If they are absorbed over here itself, then too it would be functional itself. Or we utilize certain materials which are less radio interfering, right? So when we look into this particular question, it uses very small cross section and are coated with radar absorbing material. Yes, it has a very small cross section, sharp edges, right? Stealth objects are detected using specific frequencies. Yes, they can be detected using specific frequencies. Stealth objects are coated with metamaterials to increase the scattering of the electromagnetic radiation. No, they are not. They are not concerned with scattering. If there would be scattering, there would be a detection, right? All we have to do is that whatever radio wave coming towards that particular object or that particular aircraft, it must not go back, right? Yes, we can detect the stealth object, or there is nothing called as 100% stealth. There are certain radio frequency using which we can detect this thing. These remain in the longer wavelengths of the radio radars itself. But again, this is not something which we do. There are nothing called as metamaterial coating or something like that. There could be coating or paints which could be radar absorbing, right? So in this question, when we look into 1 and 2, statements are correct. Then when we come down to another question, which is relative to the black boxes, again, question has been there or the topic has been there in discussion. Black boxes are specified memory devices which are being placed in the aircrafts at the tail of the aircrafts. They are called black boxes, but they are being painted orange, certain number of orange or red many a number of times, right? Just to identify that this is the specific kind of the memory device. These are memory devices which are being placed inside the casing of either titanium or very strong stainless steel, right? So that in case of any disaster or in case of any flight accident, etc., these memory devices remain saved just to identify what has happened with the flight, right? Now, these can store both the things, the flight data, in-flight data, and the cockpit data. Flight data is something where what, how, when the aircraft has passed by, what were the conditions while it was passing through a particular area, what was the engine speed or frequencies, etc. All of these been noted in a mathematical equation. Others are the recordings of the cockpit, what is being spoken of, right? So both the things, cockpit data and the in-flight data is recorded by these black boxes. They are kept inside a strong container of steel or titanium, and once, if there is a collision or if there is an accident, these black boxes are tracked and the actual events that have happened before the accident can be identified, right? So using this black box phenomena, or not exactly phenomena, using these instruments, which is black box instruments, we can identify the actual state of accident also, right? Now when we look into this, one more thing, these black boxes are fixed with certain trackers also. One of the tracker is GPS tracker, which is there. If it is a kind of accident, there would be a GPS frequency being inferred from these black boxes, which helps to locate the black box in case of accidents. Right. The second one is the ultrasound waves. If it is a kind of accident involving the black box being submerged in water, then it emits ultrasound waves, right? So which can penetrate out of water and we can locate that particular black box. Now when we look into this, they carry a beacon emitting red light pulses to facilitate. No, they do not emit red light pulses. They in fact emit ultrasound. Right? They record both cockpit voices and flight data. Of course, they record both. The memory devices are made using they are made using stainless steel or titanium. The devices or the casing for the devices, they are being made from the stainless steel or titanium. So statement number 2 and statement number 3 remains correct in this. Answer should have been 2 and 3 for this particular question also, right? Coming down to, or before moving further into the type of discussion that we have for science and technology, I would like you to remind about the Asmita program for Drishti IAS. Asmita program, this is one of the facilitated program where the students, either the Drishti students or even the others also, they would get a hostel facility in Noida. They can, which is one of the most prominent hospital facilities provided in Delhi, right? It is well facilitated, library connections are there, Wi-Fi connection, air-conditioned rooms, sanitation, hygiene is being taken care of. So you can avail this Asmita program also. You can call on our numbers or you can look on to various our websites also, and you can identify this Asmita program. This can be helpful for you when you are preparing for UPSC UPSC exam. Right. Next is about the question involving the space sciences. Again, an information-based question. These are informations which have been there since 2023 again, right? The Indian Space Promotion and Authorization Center in Space is an autonomous agency to facilitate participation of private entities. Yes, it has been there. It has been created since 2018. Or the autonomy or the private agencies being brought into the space program. This is there in space. This is the function of in space, in fact. Right. Next, Agnikul Cosmos launched the world's first 3D printed rocket engine. Yes. Agnikul Cosmos has created Agniban, the rocket system, which would be a small scale rocket system which can carry 30 to 300 kgs of the weight into lower Earth orbits. This Agniban has been fitted with a 3D printed semi-cryogenic engine. Semi-cryogenic would be something which would be used either using methalox or kerolox based fuel. Kerosene plus oxygen in the cryogenic state, and the kerosene being in non-cryogenic state, which becomes the semi-cryogenic condition for the rocket propulsion also. Right. Skyroot Aerospace has developed a liquid fuel for GSLV. No, they haven't developed liquid fuel. Rather, Skyroot has also been created for developing small scale rocket systems or in-flight systems, or even the small scale satellite systems also, right? So they have not been there for development of liquid fuel. So statement number 1 and statement number 2 are correct. Again, this is an information based question. See, the nature of UPSC has changed this year. Well, it has been more conceptual. Now it has been more factual. There were certain questions in which, if there are facts which are being asked, then there are concepts which are also being asked. But it is more factual this year, more contemporary also. Why there is a hue and cry, I believe, about this particular paper? Because people have limited their current affairs understanding. And current affairs has been, okay, fine, 1 year ka current affairs, pad liya, that's it. You have to understand the nature of current affairs which is being asked. You have to understand why, how, and when this current affairs is being asked, or what has been the chronology of development of a particular current affairs related phenomena. So when you understand this particular thing, these questions become easy. These are not tough questions. Right? In this question, 1 and 2 should have been the ideal answer created. Next question that we look into, then, that is about the drone swarms. Again, drone swarms have been there in current affairs. They have been spoken of. They are spoken of in foundation-based programs also. Right now, what they mixed 6G and 6G mobile phone technology and drone swarms together. Right, to confuse these students. What it spoke about, drone swarm. The drone swarms, they are small drones, right, which could be number of drones flying together for a multiple target engagement, or for multiple purposes, or we can say for a singular purpose also. This has been introduced during the Operation Sindoor also, drone swarms, right, where these swarms can carry either weapons, or they can carry the explosives, and they can reach up to multiple targets at a time. Now these are drones which communicate within themselves. The swarm is based on the method of socializing developed from insects. Insects fly in a swarm and they communicate between each other. There could be one master drone in the swarm which communicates with the ground center, and then communicates with the rest of the drones in that swarm itself. Right now, if some of these drones are being striked out, or have been hacked, or have become non-functional, the rest of the drones can come in and they can take up functions of those drones also. So they have been used in delivering explosives during the India-Pakistan exchange of weapons, or we can say what happened in Operation Sindoor or post-Operation Sindoor. Right, India did faced many drone swarms being forced towards our borders, but then we were successfully hacking those drones, and we neutralized those drones also. Right, so that's how it came into the news also. Drone swarms. Right, now drone swarms, they communicate between themselves using the general purpose radio communication that we have. At max they can go is up to 5G technology, where they can communicate, right, or the general Wi-Fi based communication, or 2.4 gigahertz radio wave communication is being established, or even the larger radio waves have been used 800 megahertz of the radio wave, or 2.4 gigahertz of the radio wave. At max they can go up to we can say 6 or 8 gigahertz of the radio waves for utility, or even at max they can go up to 5G technology, where 5G technology uses a 23 to 56 gigahertz of the radio band for communication, which is the new frequency in 5G. At max up to this particular point, but not in the terahertz. Terahertz is 1000 gigahertz. Terahertz has been a technology which is now, these two technologies, they have been spoken of separately. Right? Swarms, terahertz. Terahertz has been spoken of with 6G. Terahertz is an experimental technology which we are developing right now. which is 1000 gigahertz of the radio waves used for communication for short distances, for long distances, and without interference also, which would develop the 6G technology, right? So they do not communicate on terahertz band. Individual drones in the swarms can communicate with with other drones. Yes, of course, they communicate with each other and they perform multiple tasks at once. GPS spoofing. Spoofing is entering into a communication method, right? Spoofing is a method in which we try to replicate the actual legitimate communication. We replicate the actual legitimate communication through certain anonymous centers which just try to mislead the navigation of a particular drone. So spoofing becomes important over here. We identify the frequency, and using that frequency we communicate with the drone, and we just terminate the navigation from the ground center, and then we bring that drone down, or we can neutralize that particular drone also, right? So that becomes GPS spoofing, which is commonly used as a technique to counter the drone swarms, of course. So in this statement number 2 and 3, they are correct. Rest, one is not correct. One more question that we have seen that about the human genome about the Genome India project. Again, this is there since 2025 current affairs. It was expected to have a question in 2025 PT also, but it didn't appear. Again, this year it appeared. It is a current affairs of 2024 Genome India project, which has been initiated by the collaborative efforts of Department of Biotechnology, Department of Science and Technology, and the 10 major research institutes in India, and a consortium of approximately 20 plus research institutes in the country, which is targeted towards genome sequencing of humans. Right? In the first phase, 10,000 individuals, 10,000 Indians have been targeted. Their DNA would be taken out, sequenced, and then identified for various different diseases, for various different purposes also, right? This is a project which is a replica of Human Genome Project, or can be. The targets have originated from Human Genome Project, but Human Genome Project was separate. It was an international project. It concluded somewhere in 2004, and between 2004 to 2006, and outputs are now being used for various different types of the gene therapy. Particularly for the Indian population, this Genome India project has been started with all the most similar lines of objectives. The initial lines of objectives for the Genome India project have remained to identify the genetic markers or the genes which are responsible for the heart diseases, the brain related diseases, or other major diseases that like the diabetes that we see in Indian population, right? So it would be concluded in 2 phases. Phase 1 would be for sequencing, phase 2 for identifying the markers for such type of the diseases also, right? It is funded by Department of Biotechnology. Yes, it is. It is the primary aim to build a catalog of genetic diversity of Indian population. Of course, it is targeting that only, identifying the genetic variations in the human population in India, and then identifying the nature of these variations and the causes of these variations, and if there are certain cures which can be created for these we can say diseases or variations, then identifying those therapies also. So statement number 2 and 3 is correct for this question. 1 is not correct. But these are again simple questions. These could have been easily identified. If you look into 11 questions in science and technology, 8 of them or 9 of them could have been easily done. 1 or 2 questions always there would be a doubt about this, or there would always be a moment of surprise, how this has been asked. There would be there. These would be there. But if you are able to say solve 7-8 questions out of the 11 questions asked in science and technology, you're on a good path. Your preparation was good. You should not doubt your preparation. You should not. Next, the last question that we have in science and technology is regarding the National Quantum Computing Mission. Again, this is a question. This is National Quantum Computing Mission 2023 started, has been there for last 4 years in current affairs, has been spoken of many a number of times. You might have read about quantum computers, and then the quantum computing mission also, right? And just these statements are asked, right? Developing an intermediate scale quantum computer of 50 to 1000 physical qubits. Yes, it is targeting that. Basically, National Quantum Mission is targeting to develop 4 major things: quantum computers, quantum communication, quantum sensors, and quantum materials in India, right? For which The research institutes have been engaged. 4 major research institutes have been engaged. The premier of them is IIT Delhi, which has started with research labs. These research labs have been spoken of as thematic hubs, right? And we are trying to develop 4 different areas of quantum, in which one of this is quantum computers. And we would try to develop a physical quantum, which up to a 1000 physical qubit quantum computer. Right? So they have been there. So again, a simple information based question could have been tackled easily if you have read it with caution, right? So in this, both 1 and 2 are correct questions. So these are the major science and technology related questions. And when we look into these questions, of course, they are more information based questions. Of course, the nature might have been not conceptual or what could have been expected, but it hasn't gone beyond your syllabus. What you read in technology, what you read in current affairs, it has remained in that domain itself. It hasn't gone beyond a particular step. 1 or 2 questions, if you're not in a particular state to solve these questions, like could have been the large language model based question for certain students, not for all, right? Or 1 question being more certain questions being more factual. Rest of them, say 8, 9 questions, they have been easy questions. It could have been tackled easily. I hope for all those students who have appeared this year, they are flourishing well in science and technology. Those who have read it properly, those who have read it with concepts, those who have read it comprehensively with their intellect, they would have excelled in this particular paper, right? So thank you very much for your patience and wish you good luck for further preparations.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.